I belong with them, and that's a club that certainly you'd love to be able to join.
But how did he get there? We'll look back at the life of Jim Calhoun, from his humble beginnings in Braintree to his career at Northeastern and UConn to his bout with cancer.
It was very scary.
And we'll go beyond the bench with the coach and find out what he's like at home.
To me, he's, you know, my husband, the love of my life, the father of my children, you know, papa to all our grandchildren.
Plus, we'll find out which players, which team, and which game stand out from the rest.
It meant so much to a state. It meant so much to so many people.
But first, we explore the remarkable career of Coach Calhoun.
A career percept that took Jim Calhoun from Northeastern to UConn, and UConn from a regional team to a national powerhouse.
Come on, come on!
It's a game almost unlike any other.
Go get him!
It allows you with a ball to dream, and then by working hard and having help of others to make it come true.
A spot on the Basketball Hall of Fame is a dream come true for Jim Calhoun. But for a man who first made a name for himself as a player in college at AIC, just a few hundred jump shots away from the Hall of Fame, it's hard to fathom basketball immortality.
Beyond my wildest dreams, because I never really dreamed about being in the Hall of Fame. I just dreamed about hopefully someday have people say, this guy can really coach, and he really helped kids.
First, he had to learn how to help himself. When Calhoun was only 15, his father died of a heart attack. It forced Calhoun to become a leader to his brother and 4 sisters.
The death of my dad altered the way I had to look at life. I just felt that now the burden of responsibility was placed upon me.
Clearly was a father figure to me in those early years.
Calhoun took those leadership qualities into coaching, first at the high school level, and then as a 28-year-old head coach at Northeastern.
At first, I thought, man, I'm going to have a job sort of taming this guy down a little bit. You know, he's a little bit over the top, a little out of control. I never tamed him. And we all just got used to him and all got to love him, too.
After leading Northeastern to the NCAA tournament in 5 of his final 6 years, UConn hired him. It was May 15th, 1986, the day UConn basketball changed forever.
It's just that I feel UConn has got the pieces. It now has to be put together with time and an awful lot of hard work once again to head in the right direction. The pieces are here.
There was no doubt in his mind that he could get it done here. Now, he's coming to a place that had 4 straight losing seasons and really had just come out of talk where maybe they should get out of the Big East.
Not only did UConn stay in the Big East, they eventually ruled it.
UConn, in an amazing turnaround, captures the Big East tournament. Let the celebration begin.
In Calhoun's second season, the Huskies won the NIT. By his 4th year, UConn captured its first Big East title. And in 1999, the Huskies reached the promised land.
UConn is the national champions! The Huskies have climbed to the top of the NCAA mountain!
When Calhoun started at UConn, a national championship was unthinkable.
When Jim came, you were hopeful to be one of the top 4 in New England. And now we're not going to be happy unless we're top 4 in the nation.
Calhoun's formula for success starts with people, passion, and persistence.
I think those qualities, being at the right place, having the right players, and then letting no one give more than you give.
White ball above, lazy pass, the easy pass.
When some guys show up thinking they're early and it's 6 a.m., he's already been there at 5. Because that's just how he is.
I've often thought that when Jimmy was 13, 14, or 15, he never lost a fight because he always threw first.
He eats and sleeps basketball year-round especially. You know, he's like a different person during the season because he wants to win so bad.
Come on, Marcus, don't pull the string.
There's always that threshold of pain where you want to stop. And Coach was the type that wouldn't let you feel that.
It's tough to think of a 6'5" guy as a jockey, but he knows how to ride his teams.
Blue ball above. Just start working, people.
The trademark of Calhoun coach teams, defense and lots of running.
Here's Rudy all the way to tie it with the tomahawk.
But the coach never runs away from his players' needs.
A lot of head coaches don't travel with their teams. They go by themselves. Jim is always with the kids.
Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up.
And I'm a hands-on guy. I'm not one of those guys that don't show up and shoot around. Some coaches do that.
I want to be there with my kids. I want to actually, a lot of times, live the experience of being a player through them. And I find out that creates the bond that a lot of my players have with me and I have with them.
That bond took on special meaning in February of 2003, when Jim Calhoun was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
I want to get it out of my system, and I want to fight this like I've fought everything else in my life, and I'll win this battle.
Calhoun missed 3 weeks of coaching that season, but he beat cancer, and a year later beat the odds again, leading UConn to a second national title. Much like a championship team, cancer left a lasting impression on the coach.
It was very scary, because I want a team. I want to coach a team. I want to be involved with the team. I want to hopefully make some kind of difference in young people's lives, and that's very, very important to me. And so prostate cancer gave me a reaffirmation of what I was doing to some of our kids, particularly. It has some importance in their lives, and there's nothing more that you can do is to be able to impact others.
But Calhoun's impact on the game of basketball still hasn't quite set in.
How can I wear those?
His Hall of Fame status is now written on T-shirts and on the smiles of his wife and family. One of Calhoun's sisters proudly displays a Webster Bank cutout of her famous brother.
She finally got one, and she's going to have it in her house with Hall of Famer across. I said, Rose, you can't do that. It's just awful. But it isn't awful. It's the way she feels about her brother. It's her pride that she shows in him, which in turn is a tremendous sense to me that someone who I love very much, my older sister, as well as my other sisters and brother, that they get so much out of it, and that makes it incredibly worthwhile.
Calhoun will share his Hall of Fame night with 170 friends, family, players, and coaches. And after he's introduced by Celtics legend Bob Cousy, Calhoun may share a side of himself we rarely see during a game.
He's not the guy that you see yelling on the floor trying to get his truth, and he's clapping like that.
He's almost the exact opposite of what he is on the court. You know, it's tough to get him angry.
But he made a comment. He said, you know, the fans think when I go home, I look at Pat and I start cursing at her and telling her to pass the bleep, bleep, bleeping pillow and this and that.
Now you see him doing things and ranting and raving that you're like, wow, this guy's a little rough around the edges. But 22 other hours, you know, he's a human being and he's a family man.
And now Jim Calhoun, a father figure to so many, joins the founding father of basketball at the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
And I guess I could say incredibly proudly that wherever there are Hall of Famers, people who have distinguished themselves in their career, I belong with them. And that's something that's a club that certainly you'd love to be able to join.
Coach Calhoun certainly deserves a place among basketball's immortals. Since the NCAA tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985, he and Duke's Mike Krzyzewski are the only coaches to win more than one national championship. Calhoun's led the Huskies to a record 9 Big East regular season titles and 6 Big East tournament championships.
In 33 seasons as a head coach, he's won more than 700 games, the most of any coach in New England history. And the 4-time Big East Coach of the Year has led UConn to 18 straight postseason tournaments, 13 NCAAs, and the NIT 5 times. The other members of the 2005 Hall of Fame class are coach and broadcaster Hubie Brown, women's coach Sue Gunter, Hortensia Marcari, and Syracuse coach Jim Boeheim.
And going into the Hall of Fame with his longtime rival and friend Jim Boeheim makes tomorrow night's ceremony all the more special for Coach Calhoun.
I always liked Jimmy, but I really developed an incredible respect for his ability to continue to be good, continue to win, continue to get good players, and continue to handle it the exact same way regardless of outcome.
There's just so much respect between Jim Calhoun and Jim Boeheim. In fact, Coach Boeheim calls what Jim Calhoun's done at UConn the greatest building job in the history of college basketball.
But behind every successful man is a good woman. Amid all of Coach Calhoun's success, he's always remained most loyal to his family.
He's real. What you see is the Jim Calhoun that he is.
When we return, we'll show you a side of the coach you've never seen on the bench.
Welcome back to Jim Calhoun, The Road to the Hall of Fame. I'm Kevin Nathan along with Persephone Contest. And Persephone, so much has changed for Jim Calhoun since he was a college student here in Springfield at AIC all the way back in the 1960s.
That's right, Kev. He's now a two-time national champion, one of the highest paid coaches in the country, and a basketball Hall of Famer. But to those who know him best, he's still just a hard-working guy from Braintree, Massachusetts, who always puts his family first.
My dad was my best friend. He was my hero. He was the person I worshipped. So the loss of him was just a hole that I've been able to fill with my family, with my family now. But it took a long time for that to happen.
Jim Calhoun lost his father when he was 15 and a half. That tragic loss would obviously play a large role in molding him into the man he would grow to be.
My biggest goal in life was never to disappoint him. I never wanted to disappoint him in anything. I never went to the funeral. I just couldn't take it. I wanted to remember my dad sitting there saying, look, you got a game today. Just play as hard as you can, and I'll be out in center field. I'll be proud as heck of you. I never saw him again. I went to the game, and he went to the hospital.
He was on the field playing, and they came and got him. Some neighbor, you probably know that story, called to him over the fence and says, Jim, you better go home, your father died. And that's how he heard it. And he went home, and his mother was there, and he went over to his mother and said, don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of you. At 15 and a half, that's pretty good.
Jim Calhoun did take care of them. He says it's sometimes a burden, this sense of responsibility, but adds he doesn't see it as a curse.
I bring that sense of responsibility probably to extremes, and you can't check it at the door. It's not like hanging up a jacket. It stays with you, and I have that, and I know I have that, and I've identified it, and I think it came from the fact that I thought I was responsible. I was going to take care of my mom and my sisters and my young brother, and I think that's obviously one of the greatest gifts I have, because I won't give in until it's done. But it's also something that, once again, stays with you sometimes when maybe you should just relax, go away.
But that's not like him, the man who was born and raised in a blue-collar neighborhood in Braintree, Massachusetts. It was a tight-knit community back then, and many in the town looked after young Jim Calhoun after his father's death.
People watched out for me. They made sure that I got myself together, was able to get my life going, and put me in the right direction.
Years later, his sister Margaret introduced him to a girl from Weymouth named Pat. They married in 1967 and have 2 sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 6 grandchildren.
Oh, I describe him as handsome first. I just describe him as caring, just this wonderful, truthful, moral, loving person who is never afraid to show his emotions, and that he's real. What you see is the Jim Calhoun that he is. That's the one thing I think I've always been proud of him about. It's very hard sometimes to be in this kind of a profession where their things aren't always as they appear to be, and he is who he is, and I love that about him. I just don't see him as a basketball coach. To me, he's, you know, my husband, the love of my life, the father of my children, papa to all our grandchildren. I see the man who doesn't turn off the lights, who, you know, does the things that annoy every wife, too. I see him for who he is, and he's an enormously caring, supportive person, and he brings that to his job, certainly, as well.
His players, his coaching staff, they are all members of Jim Calhoun's extended family. Former player Caron Butler makes a special phone call to Coach Calhoun once every year.
Every Father's Day, Caron calls me and says, Happy Father's Day. It's C, Coach, because you are my father. That's very meaningful to me.
I give him a hug every time I see him. I call him Pops, you know, because that's what he is to me, a father. I grew up without a father, and he's the closest thing to one that I ever had in my life, so. You know, we got a great relationship. I talk to him every other day. Even though I'm gone, I'm still in touch with him.
People have told Jim Calhoun he's mellowed out. His answer, you're just looking harder at the man. But being a grandfather has brought out something in him.
I think it's brought out something that I probably had 25 years ago when I had my sons were younger. And I would drive Pat crazy with giving them soda, coffee, gum, ice cream. And every time they complained now as parents, you know, what are you doing, Dad? You're ruining the kids. I said, you guys had it. You turned out all right. It is a cycle of life, and when I'm with them, it really tells me that there is a plan, that it keeps on going, and they're Calhouns, and they're growing up, and they really, really are a wonder in both Pat and my lives. I think it brings out a side in you that you're glad you still have. It's great. It's like, you know, having all the fun and with less responsibility. But you still worry about them. We just hope that you know, that everything turns out in their lives the way, quite frankly, that turned out in Pat and my lives.
Pat has been with him every step of the way. Tomorrow, she joins her husband by his side for the honor of a lifetime.
I've watched Jim achieve a dream that in reality you really don't dream of, because it's not something that you can say. You can't aspire to be in the Hall of Fame when you're starting out a career. So I think for me, it's just been a journey that I've walked, you know, side by side with Jim, and get to see him just, you know, achieve the pinnacle of success for him. He leaves with his players, I think, the same thing he leaves with his children and will leave with his grandchildren. And I think that's probably the nicest compliment I could pay him, is that I would be so proud of our sons if they grew up to be exactly like their dad, and our grandson and even granddaughters. I hope they get the very best of Jim Calhoun.
And Jim Calhoun also cares deeply about his extended family, the players and assistant coaches he's gone to battle with over the last 4 decades.
When we return, Coach Calhoun reflects on some of those players, teams, and games that stand out the most in his Hall of Fame career. Greatest game you've ever been involved in?
That's really hard.
Back to Jim Calhoun, the road to the Hall of Fame. Our tribute to the longtime UConn coach, who will be enshrined into the Basketball Hall of Fame here in Springfield tomorrow night.
Now, Persef, to ask a Hall of Fame coach with more than 700 wins and a room full of trophies to pinpoint a couple of moments in an incredible career is almost impossible. But we tried it anyway. Greatest game you've ever been involved in?
It would probably be the Duke '99 championship game. It's one of the best played games in the history of the NCAA Final Four. It meant so much to a state. It meant so much to so many people, and it put us squarely on the map that we are now 101% a player.
And Calhoun gave his players complete confidence they could pull the upset.
I would have been shocked if we hadn't. And I told my assistants that, and they all kind of looked at me kind of funny. You know, this is supposed to be a Duke team for the ages. And it was a great team, by the way. But we were more experienced, and I knew that the team bought everything I was selling.
The result? A 77-74 win. But he'd rather forget this.
Leitner with the shot, and it scores, and Duke wins.
Calhoun calls the loss to Christian Leitner and Duke in the Final Eight in 1990 his hardest defeat ever.
Particularly because of the way it hit that team. That team was magical. The 1990 Dream season, there'll never be another one like it. That loss was a very, very difficult one.
And what must have made it even tougher was the way you won 2 days earlier.
Turns around, shoots, and he got it! He hit it!
It almost seemed that fate was going to take us someplace very special, and this team deserved it because it had played so well during the season.
You won't pick a best player of all time, though, will you?
Never. No, I don't think that there is. I think that unto itself, each player has contributed so much to what we've been and what we like. I mean, we'll get a player tomorrow, next day, next week, next month because of Ray Allen. We'll get another player because of Rebecca. They're still contributing.
But the player that was most prepared on and off the court would be Emeka Okafor?
There is no question in my mind. I mean, but you know what? I would imagine people in finance would tell you the same thing.
Okafor leaks, drive, dunks.
Everything about him, he was the most, you know, a purpose-driven life, I think is Warren's book now. That's Emeka Okafor.
Well, those are definitely some Hall of Fame moments, but Persef, what makes a Hall of Fame coach?
Coming up, a tribute to Jim Calhoun from past players, coaches, friends, family, and colleagues.
I give him a hug every time I see him. I call him Pops, you know, because that's what he is to me, a father.
It's been an amazing journey for Jim Calhoun. from losing his father when he was 15 to winning 2 national championships at UConn.
Yet, as his longtime friend and former UConn sports information director Tim Tollikin once told me, Jim Calhoun really won't be fully appreciated for stuff until long after he's gone.
But his career will always be appreciated and remembered here in Springfield, where tomorrow night he becomes a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely, Perseph. Thank you for watching Jim Calhoun, The Road to the Hall of Fame. For Persephone Contos, I'm Kevin Nathan. We'll leave you tonight with some of the qualities that have made Jim Calhoun a coaching legend.
If you know him or you ever was coached by him, whenever you see him, you just want to give him a big hug.
He respects each and every player, and I think you have to in turn respect him.
He goes out of his way, to make people feel special.
A lot of people who don't know Coach don't know how nice a person he is and how helpful he is to others.
Love him to death. He was like a second father to me.
He's a good person to be around. It's fun to be around people that are passionate about life.
Demands a lot from everybody around, but also gives everything he can on the court and off the court.
He's competitive, wants nothing but the best, and he gets the most out of you. He's such an intense guy. He's such a guy that, he's so passionate towards his work.
He really wants people to leave there knowing that they have a place they can come back to anytime.
If you could narrow it down to one person, if you could choose somebody that would be the center of the program, you wouldn't hesitate and you wouldn't think twice. That's Coach Calhoun.
For what he's achieved in coaching college basketball, I don't think anybody else can do that.
All great companies and all great organizations have great CEOs and leaders, and that's why UConn basketball has been so good since he's been there.
All the coaches in between were just like stewards or shepherds waiting for JC to come. And the man came and he did take us to the promised land.
What he did, in retrospect, is, I'd call it a miracle.
If I had to do it all over again, say I could snap my fingers and go back to being 18 years old again, I would come back to UConn and play for Coach in a second.
Connecticut basketball is Jim Calhoun.